Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Hello, and welcome to The Art of Being Human. I'm going to talk to you today about how we treat each other, a little about psychology and how we react to each other, because today I think we have terrible problems in communication. A lot of people angry at other people, the society just divided into different kinds of groups, and I think it's wise for us to learn how to talk to each other and to know how to respond to each other. So that's what I want to go into today. As you know, as I've said before, psychology is not a study of the mind. It is a study of observable behavior, behavior that you can see: sleeping, crying, kicking something, talking. Anything that you can see is behavior. And we can't see the mind directly, so we make inferences about the mind according to what we have seen. Now, I remember looking out the window when I was a college professor and I was working in my office, and I looked out the window and there was a woman walking by, and she was crying unconsolably, just really sobbing. And of course I knew from that behavior, that's observable behavior, that she's upset, but I could only guess what at. Since she looked like she was a college student, the college student age, then I assumed that she either broke up with her boyfriend, flunked a course, didn't go into graduate school like she wanted to, whatever. It could have been anything that upset her. But what if she didn't express that? What if she had just walked by? I would have no way of knowing how she was feeling about anything, and I wouldn't have paid any attention. But you can tell a person's behavior, how they're feeling, but it's tricky. You have to be careful about that because you don't actually know. Nobody knows exactly how another person feels. Two people can act the same way for different reasons. Two people can act differently for the same reason. So it is kind of a guessing game. Now, our emotions are expressed. Always our emotions are expressed. They can be expressed inwardly or outwardly. Sometimes we use the term inward aggression or outward aggression. But at any rate, we have to understand that people are expressing themselves in different ways. And we can always understand that the physical condition of a person makes a difference too. I might be upset because of something that's going on in my body. Somebody else might have the same behavior as me, and it's something that happened to them. So it is a very tricky thing when you try to understand behavior. Outward aggression is when you express things outwardly, and that's usually the healthier way of doing it. And that could include sports, music, art, drama, getting involved, scrubbing a floor, washing the dishes, anything that you do physically, you can also express your emotions through. Inward aggression or inward expression is different. That's when you take it on your body and your body gets the hit of it and you don't express it outwardly at all. And those are the people who have the ulcers, have the migraines, have physical problems. But I also want to say that you can get those problems without an emotional content, but you also can get those problems with an emotional content. So we do understand that people do express themselves, but sometimes they hold it in. How many times on radio or TV have you seen something like, oh, I didn't know he would do that. I didn't know he would commit murder. He was always so nice and quiet. Well, what was he always so nice and quiet about? He was holding everything in, he or she, And as a result of that, they got to their point where they couldn't take it anymore, and they exploded with it. Violence, of course, is the ultimate extreme of outward aggression, and most people don't go to that point, but some people do. And you see it all the time. Inward aggression would be when you hold it in. Outward aggression is when you explode and you let it go. Usually the better way of expressing emotions is to talk about it, to help others help you with it, and so you are expressing it in some kind of way. A lot of us use both inward aggression and outward aggression, but we have to remember that we all are different and we all experience emotions in a different kind of way. So we don't want to judge anybody, but generally speaking, outward aggression is the healthiest one. You can express your emotion in any kind of way. Now, I'm going to just give you some examples. What I had rehab recently for a surgery on my foot, and when I had, excuse me, and when I had the rehab, there was a lady beside me who had a bad accident that she was recovering from, and the nurse had to spend a lot of time with her. And I heard the nurse, after she had attended to her, come back as she was walking past me and called her a pain. She used more vulgar language than that, but she said that the patient was a pain. And I said, "Are you all right?" Because the nurse was evidently disturbed by the behavior of the patient. I said, "Are you all right?" And she turned to me and she started to yell, and she said, "What do you want?" And I said, and I said, in my calmest voice, excuse me for a minute, I said to her, I just want to know if you're going to be okay. Are you going to be okay? You seem a little stressed to me. And she said, "Of course I'm stressed, of course I'm stressed." And that was the end of it. She was all right from that point on. Was it unprofessional? Yes. But was I going to report it? No, because she had come to the end of her rope. And when that happens, you have to express it in some way. So your emotions get expressed always. And in her case, she verbally let it out. That is safe. But you have to be careful who you do it in front of. Excuse me. Now, the way that some people act superior is because they want to force you away from them. If you, excuse me for a minute. If you are a person that you feel people are against you, or there's one particular person against you, and you can't make contact with them, they may be deliberately making you angry so that you will stay away from them. People who want to be alone don't want to be bothered by other people. So what they do is they stay away. I'm going to make you stay away from me. I'm going to make you mad at me. And when you're mad at me, then you will stay away. So here again, you cannot judge the human behavior, but there are so many little things that go on with us mentally. So we want to continue here and discover something about self-concept. Self-concept is how you feel about yourself. And most people would say you either like yourself or you don't like yourself, or it's somewhat in between. But I want to add something to that. Self-concept is not only how you feel about yourself, but how you feel other people feel toward you. Now let me explain it. I go, say, as I'm growing up, I'm taking music lessons, I'm doing concerts, I'm doing this and that and the other, and somebody comes up and can say, "Oh, you're doing so well." Well, I feel good about myself. Why? Because that other person thought I was doing well, so I adopt what I think they think as part of my self-concept. Or a person may be doing some kind of a job, and somebody comes up and says, "You're not doing it right, you're doing it wrong." And so therefore they think, I'm not such a good person, they don't like me, they don't think I can do things right, therefore I can't do things right. And if I can't do things right, then I'm not a good person. We have to be very careful, because what happens is we demean each other. And demeaning means that you talk to a person and you let them feel like they have no positive self-concept, that they have no worth. And parents do it to children all the time. I've told you 10 times, don't do that. Why can't you learn what I'm telling you? What is it? What's wrong with you? And so what happens is that the child gradually gets a self-concept that's not good. And when that happens, then it's just a terrible thing because they grow up feeling no worth. So you have to be careful when you are talking to a person to give them correction, that you don't make them feel bad about themselves, that you understand that they're learning and that they can be corrected. But when you're correcting a person, you have to let them know that they're okay. You're not correcting them as a person, you're correcting their behavior. And that's important to remember. Kids do that to each other. Parents do it to each other. Parents do it to kids. I used to see a lot of kids when I was talking, when I was teaching and when I was counseling, and a lot of them felt that they didn't have any worth. And the reason is because they were continually told that they didn't have any worth because they didn't have any worth. And that's not true at all. So when you're correcting a person or dealing with them, you have to let them know that they are important people, but they do have to learn. And when you're talking to each other, you have to affirm each other's worth. I'm very concerned because society is so split that if you don't agree with me, I have the right to hate you. And that's just not the case. We were created as individual beings, and we have our individual characteristics, and that's okay. That's a part of being a human being. But when you go to a person and you say, you're not good because you don't agree with me, or I'm not good because I don't agree with you, you put a division in, and there's a lot of division in society, and I just wish it wasn't that way because it's not healthy, it's not good, it's not the way that things should be. So self-concept is a combination of how you feel about yourself and how you feel other people feel about you. It gets to be somewhat complicated. Now, I had a college professor. I need to tell you this story. When we think we're not good enough, we try to make ourselves feel good enough. I had a college professor, as it turned out. He was very, nobody liked him. Nobody wanted his classes. And the reason that nobody wanted to take it, every year he made his classes harder. He made it harder to pass. He made it harder to get a graduate degree, and he took delight in it. Well, what had happened, he had to show how smart he was all the time. And what had happened was he had gone out for a PhD and his research had been disapproved. He was not able to get a PhD. Everybody in the department had a PhD. He did not have a PhD. He tried to get one and it was refused. So I don't know how that happened. I don't know what their issue was with him, but he insisted in teaching. He made his classes harder and harder and harder each year, and the students were aware of it. Some of them dropped out because they weren't going to have him as a professor. I stayed in and I had him as a professor, but I could see what was happening. He was showing off how bright he was. He didn't have a PhD, so therefore he had to prove to the students and probably to himself that he was bright. And so he wanted them to know that. So that's the way he acted. Now, he tried to show how smart he was. To make it worse, he couldn't publish anything they wanted to publish. And you know, in the university, it's publish city. You have to publish in order to, it's publish or perish, that's what they say. And so I had written a book, and it was accepted by the publishers, and it was printed, and I got good reviews, and here I was in his class. He couldn't get his PhD, and he couldn't publish a book, or didn't publish a book. But I came in, and I published a book. The department made a real big thing of it because I was the first student, actually, in the graduate program that had published a book, and it wasn't a self-published. The publishers approached me and asked me to write a book for them, which I did, and it was accepted, and so therefore it was a published work. He didn't have a published work. So I went into him. He didn't like me very much. I went into him and I gave him a copy of a signed copy of my book. And he said all the appropriate things and so forth. And I said, well, how are you doing publishing? Which I knew he wasn't. And he said that he couldn't seem to get anything published, but he thought he would get something published soon. And then he wrote me later on, and he wanted to use some of the quotes from my book to include in his book, which I gave him permission to do. But it made kind of a sore spot there, because he wanted so badly to be published, and here his student was published before him. He wanted so badly to be known, and I was doing all kinds of things, and I was getting known, and he wasn't able to do that. And so therefore it makes it just shows you what a person will do if their self-concept is injured, if they feel that they're not good enough, if they feel people don't think they're good enough, then what do? Sometimes make up for it. Make up for it by being smarter in the sense of showing how bright you are, using the biggest words you can use instead of simple words. And it gets to be burdensome. It's burdensome for the person who's trying to prove himself. It's burdensome to the others who are dealing with it. And so it's sad to think that we have a need to be better than most, but most of us want to be better than most. I've never been able to understand why people hate each other on the basis of how good they are, how smart they are, how accomplished they are. I've never been able to understand it. We are a diverse society. We need to be a diverse society. Every person is precious. Every person has value. We shouldn't be judging each other on what we are or what we do. We should be judging each other, well, maybe not judging each other at all, but if we have to judge on the character of the person. You know, a person who's collecting garbage is just as good as a college professor. And you have to understand the fact that we have value. Every person has value. And so it doesn't matter what you do for a job. It doesn't matter the kind of characteristics you have, as long as you can be satisfied that you are the best that you can be. And if you want to be better, you can be better, but you shouldn't be judged. You should not judge yourself on what you do. I went into a doctor's office, and I was talking to the doctor, and I made the comment, I'm diabetic, which I am. And he said, no, Pat, you're not diabetic, you're Pat. You have diabetes, but you're not diabetes. Do not judge yourself on what you have. Judge yourself as a person in your own right. And this is kind of the message that I want to give to people today. We judge other people. We shouldn't be judging. We judge ourselves in comparison with them. Am I good enough for you? Do I do good enough work? Well, you have to understand that you are you, and it's all right to be you. You are a person. You are created by God. You don't have to worry about how good you are. You are a person of worth because you are. And if you can see every person as a person of worth, I think we would have a lot better way of communicating with one another. I wouldn't have to disagree or hate a person because they disagreed with me. I know I have a pastor friend who had an orchestra, and there was one person in the orchestra that wouldn't play in an orchestra unless all of the other musicians were as good as he is. And I said to the pastor, there's no room for that in the Christian church. As far as God is concerned, we're all equal. He loves us all in an equal way. And we need to be able to approach each other as you have worth, I have worth. If there's a difference, let's talk about it. Let's solve it. And it's all right if you don't agree with me always. And it's all right if I don't agree with you always. We are individuals, and we need to respect that individuality. So I guess this is what I wanted to say today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.